and get the group. All right, these Facebook Lives, they always start sooner than anybody's ready for them, or sooner than it seems to, right?
I don't even know how to do the Facebook Lives with Zoom as well. You just like...
There's just a little setting at the bottom,
and
they set it up, but it always seems to kick in before they show you that it's kicked in, so we can just be smiling.
Okay. We'll freeze it at the worst possible moment anyways.
Of course.
The
and look, there we are. We are live. All right, I'm just going to type it in. Hey, everybody. Karen and Amoya are here. Add a title and do the live anyway. Okay. And as soon as I can see it's completely up, we will dive all the way in with our beginning. Yeah. Let's just take a breath here. It's kind of nice to pause.
Definitely good.
Okay. Right on. It's coming. Okay, we're just going to jump in. Oh, I'm going to make sure we're both on camera. And we can do this over here. Okay. If anybody is watching already, we're just figuring out the technical. There we are. Okay, sweet. It's going. All right. So, Amoya, tell me how to pronounce your last name before I
Knutson.
Knutson.
Yes.
Knutson. So, hello everybody. It's Karen Murphy, and I am here today with Amoya Knutson from Single Mamas Do Travel, the infamous, the epic Facebook group. And I discovered Amoya because, and got really excited about inviting her on, because I was looking for people that were living this dream life that I was actually aspiring to. So we all have big dreams. And one of the recommendations is always to go find someone doing that, right? Especially someone who has some life circumstances that you have. So one of the limiting beliefs that was getting in my way of my big dream to travel with my kids and world school was being a single mama and that whole package. And so I started looking around who's doing this, and I found Amoya, and I found her Facebook group, and then I found her inner circle group, and she is an amazing single mama traveling the world with her 3 kids, living right now in the Yucatan. And I'm excited for you to hear her story and to connect in and hear some of the navigation of that journey that she's been on. So welcome, Amoya.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, it's good to have you here.
No, I'm so grateful for you inviting me.
For sure. When I think about single mamas, you know how people always tell us, I don't know how you do it, right? I don't know how you do what you do. It's just such a norm, whatever our lifestyle is, that, but I think a lot of single mamas have experienced busting through some limitations before we knew we could, because we had to. So exactly. I don't know, if you maybe that could be a launching off point to tell your story and how you might have busted through some layers, or just how you shifted gears.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I discovered the same thing where people say, how do you do it all as a single mom? And my story is that I got out of an abusive marriage, and I had been a single mom with my 2 teenagers previously to getting married, which is where I had my youngest daughter. And when I became a single mom, again, it was like my worst nightmare, because my experience of being a single mom years ago when I was much younger was so heartbreaking and stressful and all these things that a lot of people think of when they think of single motherhood, right? And I just wanted to rewrite that narrative. I just wasn't willing to settle for that narrative again. So I looked at my life and I decided I just really wanted to live. My youngest daughter was only 3 months old when I had separated from my now ex-husband. And my two older girls were, because they're almost 16 and 14 right now, but they were, I think, 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. And So we just decided to go on this grand adventure. I decided to sell all my possessions and set off on traveling the world. And that's exactly what we did for 2.5 years before moving to Merida, Mexico, falling in love with it because we came to visit and deciding to set up home base. And as far as my business goes and Single Moms Do Travel, I started the Single Moms Do Travel group because I wanted to find other single moms that were traveling because single motherhood can be very lonely. It's hard to find others that can relate to our unique journey. And then if you throw in travel and living abroad and entrepreneurship and all these other types of things in the mix, it can be really hard to find your circle. So I created Single Moms Do Travel, and all of a sudden people started coming to this group because I don't think there was anything really out there for traveling single mamas or mamas who had this desire for something different, something outside of the box. So that's how it grew. And I started blogging immediately when we started traveling, but it was just like a personal blog. I never imagined it would turn into this business and everything that's come from it. But yeah, it's just been such a it's shocked me with how many first of all, how many single moms I've met on the road that are living this lifestyle because I just didn't know. I couldn't find that information. There wasn't a lot of blogs out there about traveling single moms or even YouTube channels or anything like that. So to connect with so many amazing mamas all around the world has just been amazing.
I love hearing that because it really speaks to sometimes you just got to take those steps and get out there because it's all our perception about what's out there and what's not out there until we experience it. We have no idea.
True.
So what helped you shift to take charge of rewriting that narrative? What was your narrative before?
My narrative before was so different. So I was married and I was in school full time because I graduated right before my youngest was born. So I went to school full time. I worked part time. I had a big old fancy house and car and debt and basically the American dream that you work so hard for, right? And I remember it was this thing of like, I felt like I had done things the wrong way before because I was a teenage mom. I wasn't married when I had my 2 older kids. So I thought, well, if I get married, then I finish my degree, then I buy the house, and then I have the baby, I've done things right. So I did that. I got married, I finished my degree, we bought a house, I finished my degree, and then we had our youngest, and then my entire marriage fell apart when I woke up and realized like this harsh reality that I was living in, which was an abuse of a marriage. And it just kind of shook me to my core because I felt like society had told me if I do these things, like I would be happy, right? I have the stuff, I have the house, I have everything I could have asked for, but there was something inside me that was so unhappy for majority of my life. And I couldn't figure it out. I would journal and say, I just want to be happy. I just want to be a good mom. So really this shift came from this desire to discover happiness. And by releasing my possessions, so getting rid of my possessions and going into new cultures with people who had oftentimes so much less material items than I had had, but to find that they had so much joy and so much connection with their family led me on this discovery of the happiness is always within. And you just have to, get down to like the root of things and discover that within yourself by basically stripping away like all the things in your physical presence, right? So it was just like this, I just didn't want that narrative anymore. It's almost like I wanted to just shed that narrative completely and create and write my own narrative of what happiness meant to me and my girls and our family and what a good life meant for us, which might be different than it is for a lot of other people.
That is so empowering to hear that story, just because it's causing me to think, yeah, what about this narrative that I'm living isn't working anymore? How can I rip out that page? And maybe that page isn't wrong. Maybe that early, being a teenage mom, being in a challenging abusive relationship, I have stories of my own that I could be calling wrong or bad in the past that have all been catalysts for this next phase, right? Like maybe that was just a powerful catalyst to shift you into this next narrative. And we always have that opportunity to be evaluating and thinking, it's like, is this really working for me? Is this working for my kids? I think this time on the planet right now with the virus and with all that's arising in the collective culture right now is an opportunity to be a real catalyst moment for a lot of people. Can you talk about how you actually shifted out of having job and debt and house and like shifting into being able to provide for your kids on the road?
So, oh man, that's a hard thing to even answer because just like you had said earlier, I don't think anything in my previous life was actually wrong. I'm so grateful for all the experiences because what happened from these life lessons, whether you want to call them good or bad life lessons, right? Some of the tough, some of the good is what's created the person that I am to this day, right? And this ability to support my girls with a location independent income by creating a business that I love. And all I did was, I don't even know what I did. Honestly, like I just created a business out of my passion for travel and living abroad and all that. It's so weird, right? Because it's like, what are the steps? And it's just like, I basically took my life that I was living and turned it into a business. I took my passions and turned it into a business by sharing, and giving value to people, and then them wanting to like, okay, how can we support you on this journey? How can we be a part of this journey? And it's almost, and if you see the inner circle, and even before that with other things that I put out, it's like this family, right? It's almost like you're paying to be a part of this really empowered family of single mamas who just get it. They get what it feels like to maybe not want to live a traditional life. I don't want to say a traditional life, but maybe not live what society is telling them they have to live by or they should live by, those guidelines that are kind of there without maybe being stated necessarily, but they're just there, right? Like it's ingrained in our culture. And then what you're seeing happening with everything around the world, from the virus and what's happening with protesting and riots. I'm actually, I'm not on social media right now, so I just started diving in recently to seeing what's happening when it was brought to my attention. And it just broke my heart, and it further reminded me of why I do the work I do and why I've chosen to travel and explore other cultures and become a more compassionate human being and a more open-minded human being and a more loving human being, because I think the world needs a whole bunch more love and a whole lot less hate. And I don't know. It's tough, with everything going on. It's definitely weighing heavy on the world right now. Like the world is screaming for change, and it's up to us to create that change in whatever way we can, whether that's using your platforms, your personal Facebooks, you're just talking within your inner circle, your family and friends, like what change can we create to help heal this world that's, suffering so much and really has been suffering for a long time.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think what you spoke to, the power of living your passions and then expressing those, and then transitioning that to actually make a livelihood from it, creates amazing platforms to be expressing your truth in a wider way, like to be an influencer on what this world is that we're co-creating together. And like you said, there's so much rising to the surface that has been in need of, there's many George Floyds out there in our known human history. And it's like all of that underground trauma is now bubbling up, and we're all feeling like so many people who haven't been aware, who haven't felt it, are feeling it again and now.
Yeah.
And new opportunity to, like, even as you said it, I could feel in my body the response of what it is to be sitting with this recent heartache. And that experience of just flowing those sensations through my body, I know is of service, because that's part of the transmutation we get to do, just like on an energetic level, which is the quantum aspect of all of this. Is there's so much moving that we can't even see. There's all this surface movement, and then there's so much more additional rippling happening. And that holding of compassion is so valuable, so that we can make sure that this change is truly transformational instead of just surface level, right?
Surface level and going right back to how things were before. I feel like it's like 2020 has been shown us this buildup of what's been happening, right? So when COVID came, it made us have to really sit with ourselves. And I think for some people, and myself included, it was uncomfortable to have to sit with my thoughts, to have to really look at what is important to me and what is not. You know, what am I wasting energy on, worrying about, or stressing over that really is not that important in the grand scheme of things? And then with everything else going with George Floyd, like I said, I caution diving too deep in things, but it's also an injustice to him and everybody else before him to not look at it, right? It hurts me on an energetic level. It's always hard for me to process these things. And I actually was feeling all types of way without even knowing what was going on. I had a friend say, Amoya, do you know what's happening back in the US right now? And I said, what do you mean? Because I was walking around just really just angry and I couldn't explain it. And I was talking to him about, I was reading another book by a white male, and I just felt like, why is all the information, like, where is the voice? I don't know. But he said, do you know what's happening? And I had no idea. So I checked into it, and it just broke my heart, because the change needs to happen. Like, we can be loud and all these things that you see are happening, but what my fear is always going back to just being distracted by something else, right? Like something else coming in and taking our focus away from change, right? Which really is what needs to happen. Like, how do we move forward? How do we change? How do we show compassion? How do we bring more love? And it starts, I think, with ourselves, right? We have to work on our own self-love and our own healing in order to create any change. And until we're willing to sit with ourselves, and I felt like COVID was the start of it, at least in 2020. Sit with yourself and heal some things that you need to heal. There's no way we can create change, right? Unless we're at least starting with ourselves and working on ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think this is the year of being uncomfortable and getting comfortable with that, right? Wherever we're at, because we've all inherited this system that's in need of change, and we all are playing the roles that we're supposed to be playing. And so just to sit with whatever's arising for each one of us it's that starting point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So apologies to anybody on Facebook who's commenting, because it's beyond my capacity to keep track of both the Zoom and the Facebook, but we will respond. I'll respond back after our time together. So Amoya, can you tell us, can you share any stories from the road about what it is to be like traveling as a single mama?
Oh my God. I can share so many good, and I can share just absolutely crazy stories, but let me think about the good. I can share one good story with travels is I had started a program when I was living in Albania. And it was a program to help other single moms start the travel life. It was the first time I put out a course, and it was geared towards Americans, right? But I had a Mexican woman write me, and she just said, I really want to be in your course. I can't pay for it, because it was geared towards Americans. The pricing was USD, and on her peso, it was a lot. And I had business coaches at the time that told me, you cannot give away services for free. Like you have to pay in order for it to be valued. But I went against that, and I let her in the course, and we developed this amazing relationship. She went on to start a business, and she is actually a big reason of why I moved to Merida, Mexico. I had came here. I was living in a different part of Mexico, and I was invited to her surprise birthday party. And I went to it and fell in love with the city and fell in love with the people. And her and I have been like sisters ever since. But with travel, it's not so much, I mean, travel is in itself amazing and healing and transformational, but really it's about the human connection. It's about the people you meet on your travels that you wouldn't meet if you didn't leave your front door, right? If you didn't explore even your own backyard or your own city, like, you know, leave your phone at home and get lost is what I say to people who can't travel outside of their city, right? You can travel within your own area just by going down a different road, right? Or walking instead
Yeah,
of driving, whatever the case is. But
definitely.
um, and I've just met so many amazing people on this journey. I've also had tons of crazy experiences, like getting lost in the jungle in Puerto Rico. It was our first big trip, and we were out of reception or out of data, and driving through this with our little rental car in the jungle, and there were like burnt down cars along the road, and it looked like a zombie apocalypse, and it was raining because it's the rainforest, right? And it was getting dark, and I'm freaking out, and my girl's like, it's okay, Mom, calm down. And we ended up finding our way eventually to this Airbnb in the middle of the jungle. But it was just this experience of like, that's really what travel is. Like, for me, travel's not pretty, but it's always beautiful is what I say, right? Because it's messy. And usually if you put a plan, or at least for us, like it never goes to plan. It's just like this thing that pushes you out of your comfort zone. And that's where the growth is this constant being pushed out of your comfort zone and then growing and transforming from these little experiences. But I have way too many travel stories for today. Like, it's just like part of our thing, but it's been a great experience. There's been times when we want to give up and quit. I've stated it. We had a really tough time in Ireland due to what I felt was racism. And I'd experienced it a little bit in the US. I'm actually mixed. And I feel like with the climate today, it's a good topic, but that I almost get a pass sometimes. But in Ireland, I didn't get that pass. And it was the first time I was really shaken to my core from the moment I stepped up to the immigration, you know, in order to cross into the border at the airport, for them to stamp your passport. And the way she spoke to me and basically told me, you're not coming into my country. And she went through my messages. She went through my bank account. Yes, they can do all this stuff at any border if they would like. Went through my phone, went through everything, and just treated us like absolute garbage. But she eventually let me in. And then from there, we just had really tough experiences. And I know that a lot of that might have just been where I was at energetically. Like, it was a canceled flight, getting to Ireland, like all this stuff. But it led us on such a beautiful journey to Italy, and then falling in love with Albania and staying there for 5 months. And we know one day we will give Ireland and Northern Ireland another chance, because it wasn't their people. It was just what I was energetically, you know, inviting almost in my life during that time. So yeah, but travel.
Yeah, so when you talk about your experiences of going from, you know, just being on your edge often and going past and finding out that actually we survive in those experiences.
Do.
Tell me what your kids' experiences are. Are they, you know, they probably have their own journey with
Oh my
each of
gosh.
those moments.
Those poor girls. Like, no, it's amazing. Well, it's just amazing to see how much they've grown during this journey. And I would say, like, one of my daughters, my teen, she's just kind of over travel in a sense. When we do get to a destination, she tends to have a great time for the most part, but they've really been on this journey as well, right? And they've actually been, especially my older daughter, she's been a really grounding force for me when things go wrong, which tends to happen a lot. That's actually how I got the blog name Trippin Momma. A lot of people assume it's because we take trips, right? But really it was based in 3 things. Trippin, as in losing my mind at all times during our travels, at least for the first year, right? And then trippin, as in I fall down everywhere. Like, if I'm walking with you, there's a chance I will fall in some random hole. If there's a hole, I'll find it. And then trips, as in we take trips, right? But my girls have been just such a sound ground, such a grounding force for me, and they really made this journey so unique. And then my youngest is just like born to travel, right?
Mm.
You send her to an airport and she just lights up. She loves everything about it. She's super flexible, but she's been doing this since she was like 7, 8 months old. It's the only life she's known.
Mm.
So yeah, my girls, though, I've seen them go from being really, really scared to even talk to people. I would say more like a social anxiety thing. And I myself had that, which is people are like, what do you mean? You're so extrovert. And I'm like, you just didn't know me 3.5 years ago. But my girls now will order like food in another language. You know, they'll order their own food. They'll go to a store by themselves. They'll go to the mall. They're just so free. I've just seen this sense of freedom. And I think that this lifestyle gives us freedom. Maybe that's why I struggle with COVID so much, because I felt like what I say to people is that we live in this bubble here in Mexico or wherever, if you're traveling, because we are not bound by the societal rules of the US where I'm from, and I'm not bound by the societal rules of Mexico either, because we get a pass. Oh, they're foreigners, you know, they do this, they eat at 5 instead of 10, they're foreigners. Like, we get this almost bubble of freedom. And when the virus came about, this whole thing, it's almost like our bubble got burst, and we started feeling that almost, you know, until we changed our perspective of it or perception of it, it was almost like we got caught back up in that feeling of not being free, which is how I felt prior to this lifestyle. It was like this feeling of being trapped, you know, living a life that wasn't really mine, and just doing things that I was told I was supposed to do, instead of just living in the moment and following passions and following my heart. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what's happening this year for so many. It's that call to freedom. Like,
Yeah.
where do I feel constricted in my life? Where are my kids being constricted in the, you know, in figuring themselves out with that spaciousness?
Mm-hmm.
And then how can we catalyze our experience into creating more freedom and space?
Definitely.
Just taking our time. Awesome. So when you speak of a lot of single mamas, and I think mamas and papas in general, when they think about traveling the world with their kids, there's a lot of fear that can rise up.
Yeah.
Can you speak to how you've navigated some of that?
Gosh, man. So I would say when I first started, I didn't have too much fear. Like, I actually almost have more fear now. And I think that's based on others' fears, because I do connect with a lot of my clients come to me about the fear around traveling. But at the time that I had started, I was so determined. And I will say this, I think what a lot of people don't know about me is that I grew up in Panama in Central America, because my mom was military, and I was in the military myself, and I was stationed overseas in Belgium. So I had already had all this experience, and I was a child, and then I was also a single mom when I was in the military. So it was all this, you know, I had experience, I guess, with travel. So I didn't have as much fear around it. I also think I was just so wanting change that was like my drive, my motivation, right? Like, everything else just fell to the wayside, because it's like, I cannot be in the US right now. I need to travel. I need to find out who I am, and I need to heal myself, and I need to help my family heal from this experience that we had or life that we had been living for so many years. So I just was determined. But you know, what I tell people all the time is like, what's scarier? Taking that leap of travel or something different than what you're used to, or never doing it? Like, never following what you want to do, or following it. Like, what's the scarier thing? And then using that to propel you forward. And what helps with fear is just connecting with other people who are already doing it. So for me, I try and always connect with moms that are already in the area, or others that are already in the area we're traveling to. And that's the great thing about Single Moms Do Travel, our Facebook group, is because there's so many traveling single mamas. And even if you're just going on a weekend trip or whatever, like, you could say, hey, I'm going to be in Florida on this date, or I'm going to be in Guatemala here. And you could find someone to travel with, or that's already there to connect with, to help with that fear that can come from something unknown. You know, traveling to a new place is unknown. It can be scary for a lot of people. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's helpful. That's helpful. I think having remembering experiences in the past where we did move through, and just like anchoring that into this moment too is one thing that's helped
Definitely.
me. And also, you know, just recognizing that there's I know for me as a single parent especially, but even just as a parent, is just remembering that there is actually, you know, a lot more support than meets the eye. You know, we're kind of conditioned, especially in the United States, to be in these little boxes, you know, like,
Yes.
here I am, one parent, 2 kids, 3 kids, that I'm on my own forging my path, you know. And it turns out that when you need help, there is so much available.
There is. And I think that's what I had discovered. It's like when I left the US is when I started discovering that I wasn't really alone. It doesn't mean I was alone in the US. I just think we're conditioned to believe that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's in their own little like box or house or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and that's it. So I had to really discover this human connection, right? That there's so many people out there to connect with, and it takes me putting myself out there and overcoming certain fears in order to be able to connect with people. I mean, I was terrified to come to Mexico, which is so funny because I'm such a proponent of Mexico. And anytime someone says they're scared to come, like I have to hold back for a second and say, Amoya, you were scared at one point because of the narrative that was placed on what Mexico is. And I remember the first night I arrived in Mexico, this was a few years ago, it was in Guanajuato City, Mexico. It's at nighttime. And I remember feeling when I drove through those streets and the taxi driver was so friendly, and then the Airbnb, I said, oh my God, I've been lied to my entire life about Mexico. Like, where is this, you know, harsh country that I heard this day? Like, everyone was so kind. I felt like I was part of the family with some of these strangers, and I never felt alone because everyone was so connected. They were talking to each other. Like, families were sitting at plazas and parks, and they weren't on their phones. They were like holding actual conversations with each other. And I was just so fascinated by the peace and the warmth of this culture and this country. And then kind of mad at myself for not coming sooner based on the fact that I was terrified to come to Mexico. I was supposed to drive here, and I chose I'm not going to drive because for sure we'd be kidnapped and killed if we drove, right?
Right.
So I flew in, and yeah, so I mean, I get it. I really do. This fear that can come along with all this unknown, especially when you have like the media and all these other kind of stuff that might put not so great of a spin on things. So I think doing it anyways and like really exploring and drawing your own conclusion from that. I mean, there's just so many people to connect with around the world and so much to experience that it's worth it. We went to Guatemala in November for 3 weeks, my daughters and I, and the only thing I wanted to do was hike an active volcano. And in my head, that just sounded so cool. And I didn't really grasp the whole active volcano part. I've never done something like that. But we went, and it was the toughest hike of our life. And it was such a beautiful thing, though, because my teens actually took turns carrying our toddler up on their backs for hours up this volcano, right? And we get up there, and it was this silence like no other. It was the closest you could be to God. You know, I'm more of a spiritual person. I don't want to give a name to the God, source, energy, the universe. Like, it was so silent, and then you would just see this explosion of lava right near you, right? And the sound of crackling lava would break that silence that you just can't get anymore, this type of silence, right? And just to see my girls feel so accomplished because a lot of the adults couldn't complete this hike without having to ride like a horse up most of the way. So for us to have completed this and to be on an active volcano, it's almost like if we go out right now, because if this thing explodes or erupts, we're done for, right? Which I didn't think about until I got up there. I just didn't really grasp the whole, it's an active volcano, right? I said, this would be the moment. Like, you know, we did the one thing in life. It just was like absolutely life-changing. And just to see the accomplishment, and not just them, my older teens, on my toddler, one of her favorite games is The Floor is Lava. And she saw that lava and just shouted, the floor is lava. Like, it brought her game that she played with her imagination for the last year to real life, to see lava in person and be so close to it that you could feel the heat. and just hear the sounds was just like such a magical experience. But if I had let fear dictate me, there's no way in heck I would have hiked an active volcano with my 3 children, which a lot of people would probably call me absolutely nuts. But and I'm not even sure I would do it again, because I think I grasped the whole, it was an active volcano, but it was such a life-changing experience for us all, every single family member.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it sounds amazing. And you have a video on your YouTube channel.
I do. I have a video
I
of
think
it.
I caught some of that. Yes.
Yeah. I tried to it was like, you know, when you're doing something and I'm like, I wish my camera could capture what I'm hearing and seeing, and there's just no way it could capture the magicalness of that life-changing experience. But it was just like one of the toughest things we'd ever done. But it was so amazing and worth all this craziness of transformation and hard times and good times during our travel life and our living abroad life. It was like that moment.
That's so great. I love hearing those stories, because I feel like what it offers the rest of us who might not have pushed ourselves to those levels, or anyone who's aspiring to travel and have those adventures with their kids, we can borrow that. We can borrow that empowerment. We can borrow those experiences of, you know, pushing through fears and knowing that it's actually going to work out, and begin to trust in someone else. If it happened for someone else, it can happen for me.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's something that you really infuse into your work in the world with the blog and the group and the inner circle. Do you want to share some more about that and how people can lean in for more of your good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me with Trippin Momma on YouTube and on Facebook, and also join the Single Moms Do Travel group if you are a single mama. We have a new course for anybody who's looking to move abroad coming out. The Ultimate Guide to Moving Abroad is coming out in early July. If you're in the Single Moms Do Travel group, you'll find out all about it. Or if you go to my blog, you can join the email list. But it's basically just, I didn't have a guide when it came to this at all, this lifestyle. And I'm glad for that. I learned a lot of lessons, but I want to make it a little bit smoother. Although I think some tough times are important for our growth, like that's where we get those deep lessons. I wanted to make it a little bit smoother than maybe how mine went those first couple of years with travel and with living abroad and this type of lifestyle. So I created a course that will help women be able to make an actual plan. I think some people have a hard time just getting over that fear, that initial fear, and the mindset as well. You have to be able to shift your mindset to even think that it's possible, because if you don't believe it's possible for you, you'll never act on it. And it's understandable to feel that way. Like, we've been told as single moms that we can't do things. Single moms can't do, right? But that's the whole thing about Single Moms Do Travel, is we can do anything we put our minds to. Like, it takes a change in perspective. It takes a change in mindset to say, I can do this. And by watching these other pioneers that are doing these amazing things, and for those that can't, like, take a plane to Guatemala for whatever reason, or Mexico or something like that, like, exploring your own backyard is something I'm really big, like changing your current life how it is, you know, whether that's, you know, changing your inner circle of who you surround yourself with, reading and ensuring that you're filling yourself with positivity and devouring positivity and stuff like that are all things you can do. You don't have to leap around the world in order to create change within yourself and within your own community.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I had that experience when my son and I were deciding that we really wanted to hit the road and travel this summer, which is put on hold for now, but it was in the winter and the spring, and we're like, okay, we know this is coming. What can we do now to actually live into that dream? And that's what we decided to do. We decided to travel 20 miles down the road and visit the little town next door, like we were tourists. And we did that in 3 different little communities in our area. And these are towns that my son has lived around his whole life. But just the idea that we are going to be tourists, we are going to know this place like we haven't known it before. we saw so many things that we had never noticed, and we went in the local dives, you know, and hung out with the locals. And we
So much
explored the
fun.
nooks and crannies, and it was awesome. We had a blast. We felt like we were in Venice or whatever. Like
See?
we had that same elevated emotional experience as we would when we do get to Cusco or Peru, or like, you know, the places that we dream about going.
Yeah,
No
I
doubt.
tell people all the time, it's like, because a lot of people, the financial side of things, like how can I afford to travel or live abroad and stuff like that. But you know, you can explore your own backyard. You can explore your own city or a town nearby while you come up with a way to um, invite more abundance into your life, to be able to do other things. Like there's so much to see and do in your own area, and just changing little things. Like I said, turn left instead of right.
Yeah.
You know, I said, take the stairs instead of the elevator. It's the people you meet, right? The
Yeah.
people and all that stuff that just make it such an amazing experience. So
Mm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks, Amoya, for all you're doing to pioneer the path and to turn around and offer your insight back to those of us who are seeking to do similar rewritings of our narratives. And I highly recommend both the Single Mamas Do Travel group, but especially the Inner Circle, because when I stepped into there, like not even that long, but that community is really tight and amazing, and those single mamas are doing amazing things. They don't necessarily all recognize it. It's like we get into our norm, right? But
yeah.
each single story that I come across in the circle is like, wow, I am so impressed. And that's why I'm going to be interviewing more of the single mamas in the group.
Yes, it's such
So
a great
inspiring.
space. Thank you.
Right on. Well, I'm going to let us go. I know you have a next,
I do.
you have more on your agenda for today. I'll be seeing you there.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Amoya.
Thank
I've
you
linked
again.
to this post if you want to follow up with Amoya and check out what she has to offer. And have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.